This episode of the Burnout Recovery Podcast is brought to you by MEGA, your medical indemnity partner. Whether you're starting out in your career or have decades of experience, MEGA helps you thrive with support that goes beyond insurance. Enjoy travel benefits like complimentary travel insurance and Qantas points on your membership, plus education, medico-legal support, access to career coaching and wellbeing resources. Visit mega.com.au to learn more. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.
Welcome to the Burnout Recovery Podcast, a guiding resource dedicated to healthcare professionals on their journey to overcoming burnout. Spearheaded by Dr. Jo Braid, a certified professional coach and rehabilitation physician.
Hello and welcome back to the Burnout Recovery Podcast. I'm Dr. Jo Braid, and this is episode number 192. I want to start today with a question, and it's one I do hear from high performers who I coach at some point during our coaching relationship, usually earlier on. Jo, I'm already doing all the right things. I'm sleeping fairly well, I'm exercising, I'm taking breaks. So why do I still feel like this? And the honest answer is, look, those things definitely are necessary. But for some of us, those of us who run hard and care deeply, they're not always sufficient. Because here's what can happen. We can get so good at maintaining the routine that we become numb to what's underneath it. We tick the boxes, we hit the metrics, and we quietly lose touch with who we actually are and what we actually value. And the doing crowds out the being. I had a moment on the Women in Leadership course I attended in Italy recently. And yes, Italy keeps coming up on this podcast, and I make no apologies for that. We were asked to distill down our values. Start with 10 from a larger list of about 30, and then distill them down to your real workplace values of just 2. The 2 that are most fundamentally and non-negotiably you. Mine are connection and courage. And I've done values exercises before, and they weren't those 2. So really sitting with those 2 made me think, okay, who am I when I'm really living these values, and how does that show up on a day-to-day basis? So we're going to look today at why our standard well-being toolkit can fall short for high performers and what the science says is driving the stress spiral underneath. This is not about doing more. It's actually about doing something that connects back to you. So I'll tell you about a coaching client I had who we will call Sonia. She was a senior pediatrician, meticulous, deeply committed to her patients, and by anyone's external measure, doing really well. When we first spoke, she walked me through her routine, almost like she was presenting a case. I'm in bed by 10, I exercise 5 days a week, I've cut back my roster, I meditate when I remember, I track my sleep with my watch, I track my steps, I track my heart rate variability, I'm doing everything right. And then she said, so why do I feel like I'm just white-knuckling through every week? And here's what struck me about this coaching conversation. Not the exhaustion, I do hear that a lot. It was the word tracking. Sonia had turned her exercise and her recovery into a performance, something to check and see how it was going every single day. And, that's sort of waking up, checking a score, and if the score was green, she felt well, or she felt okay. And if the score was amber or red, she felt behind before the day had even started. So you're giving you're over to your wellness routine to become another domain to excel in, another standard to meet, another place to potentially fall short. And I know this feeling as well. There was a time when I was tracking my sleep with an app connected to my phone, not on my watch. And, you'd start the day and go, oh, how's my sleep app looking this morning? What's the feedback? How did I go last night? And after a while, I really didn't like that sort of intervention and monitoring. And was it good? Was it bad? How does that affect how my day's starting? And similarly, I do have an Apple Watch, but sometimes I'm just like, I don't want this thing to be saying how many steps I've done and if I've closed my exercise circle or not. And I have a beautiful, old-fashioned, completely analog watch that has been calling me. It tells me nothing except the time. And, sometimes that is exactly what I want, just the time, not a tracking device as well. And I'm not anti-tracking. Data definitely has its place, but for a particular kind of person, and I can definitely fall in this group too, they're driven, they're high achieving, they're deeply invested in doing things well. The tools that we use for recovery can quietly become part of the stress load. So let's look at 3 pieces of research that explain why the standard toolkit doesn't always cut through. The first is the concept of allostatic load, and this was developed by Dr. Bruce McEwen. And allostatic load is essentially the cumulative wear and tear on your body and brain from chronic stress. Think of it as your physiological debt. So here's the key insight. Once that debt has accumulated past a certain threshold, the basics, sleep, exercise, good nutrition, can slow the accumulation, but they can't necessarily clear the debt, not on their own. It's a bit like trying to bail out a boat with a teaspoon when there's a slow leak that hasn't been fixed. You can bail out faster, you can bail out more efficiently, but until you address the leak itself, you're always going to be behind. And the leak in this case is usually psychological. Unresolved values conflict, chronic identity threat, perfectionism running at full tilt, and a sense that your worth is entirely conditional on your output. So sleep doesn't necessarily fully fix those things, and exercise doesn't either. And the second piece of research comes from Stanford, from Dr. Jordan Etkin, who studied what happens when we track our own behavior. Her findings are counterintuitive and quite confronting. Tracking an intrinsically enjoyable activity, like walking or rest, can actually reduce the satisfaction we get from it, and in some cases increase cortisol levels in high achievers. Because the moment you introduce a metric, you introduce the possibility of success or failure. And for people who are already primed to evaluate their own performance, that's not neutral information. That is a judgment. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between I didn't hit my step goal or I didn't hit a work-related KPI. Threat is threat. The third piece of research I'm sharing is from neuroscientist Dr. Matthew Lieberman, whose work on the brain's default mode network is really fascinating. The default mode network is the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on a task. It's your resting state. And in high performers under chronic stress, this network is often hijacked by rumination. You lie down to rest, and your brain starts rehearsing tomorrow's difficult conversation. You go for a run, and you spend the whole time problem solving, which means that you might not be getting that sort of restorative timeout outcome that you were hoping to have with that intentional lie down or the run, which is obviously sort of high energy, but it can be a real brain clearing time. And a nervous system that really never fully downregulates can't restore itself. So putting those 3 things together, accumulated physiological debt that basics alone can't clear, a tracking mindset that converts recovery into performance, and a ruminating brain that keeps the stress response running even during rest, that's the stress spiral, and it's really common. So what can we do with this? Let's go through the 4 pillars, and I'll give you a slightly different application of each one for this particular pattern. Let's start with mindset. So the deeper intervention here isn't reframing or positive thinking. It's values clarification. And I mean really distilling down to 2 or 3 values that are really true for you. A question I use in coaching is, if I stripped away my job title and my to-do list, what 2 values would I want to be living by this week? And then, is what I'm doing actually an expression of those values, or am I just doing busy stuff? You're really looking at that gap between your answer and your reality. For support, solo wellness practices definitely have their place. However, co-regulation, that is recovering through genuine human connection, is neurobiologically different than a meditation app. Your nervous system literally borrows calm and syncs up with other people's nervous systems. It's the science of the social baseline theory developed by psychologist James Cone. Isolation can amplify the stress response, and connection buffers it. So the question here isn't, what am I doing for myself? It's, who actually knows how I'm doing right now? Not my professional performance, me. If the honest answer is no one, that's important information to think about and do something differently around. Movement. I'm not going to tell you to exercise more. You're probably already doing that. What I will say is this: there's a meaningful difference between movement as performance and movement as release. So if you're tracking every workout, monitoring your output, and feeling vaguely guilty on rest days, that's not really recovery. Just try one session this week with no data, no watch, no app. Just move for the experience of it and notice what that feels like. Finally, sleep. Not sleep optimization, but sleep permission. For a lot of high performers, the problem isn't sleep hygiene. It's the rumination that happens in the 30 minutes before sleep and often when you wake up. The brain is cycling through unresolved problems. So what helps here is a genuine offload. Write down the 3 things your brain has on repeat before you get into bed. Not to solve them, but just to acknowledge that they've been noted and they exist somewhere other than your head. Okay? And this simple act can really reduce nighttime rumination, because the brain's job is to hold on to things it thinks might get lost. Give it somewhere else to put them. So here are 3 reflection questions to sit with this week. Firstly, is there anything in your current wellness routine that has quietly become another performance metric? Secondly, if you had to name your 2 core values right now, what would they be? And thirdly, when did you last experience genuine rest? Rest where you actually felt like your nervous system let go. And one action this week: choose a tracking tool that you use, a sleep score, a step count, an HRV reading, and take a 1-week break from it. Not forever, just a week. And notice what changes. Notice what you feel without the data. If any of this is landing and you'd like to expand on it, one-on-one coaching is exactly the space for this kind of work. You can join the waitlist at drjobraid.com/coaching. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Burnout Recovery Doctor, that's DR, on LinkedIn, and my weekly newsletter, The Sunday Long Game, goes out every Sunday at drjobraid.com/subscribe. Next week, we're going into industry blind spots, how your sector's specific success culture is quietly fueling burnout in ways that are easy to miss when you're inside the system. I'll see you then. Ready to take the next step in your burnout recovery journey? Visit drjobraid.com for free resources, all 150 plus podcast episodes, and information about my keynote speaking. Links are in the show notes. Your well-being matters. Protect the asset that is you. Be your best you. Rely on MEGA for your protection and support, serving doctors for over 125 years through insurance, education, medical legal advice, and member benefits designed to help you thrive and succeed. Insurance issued by Medical Insurance Australia, which has not taken into account your objectives or situation. Before you make any decisions about our policies, please read our PDS and consider your needs. Call us for a copy or visit mega.com.au.